I'm Christina. Welcome to this episode of Women's Health, Wealth, and Happiness Interviews to Inspire. This episode is sponsored by Everyday Kids Travel, a kids and parents travel review site. Our next guest guides her clients through financial transitions as a certified financial planner and certified divorce financial analyst. She understands that financial resilience comes from the ability to shift direction when needed, while still moving towards the goal and creating a comfortable, open dialogue about finances. Rivka believes that health is the capacity to experience the world on a physical, emotional, and spiritual level. Being present in your moment with your people and in your place, you can appreciate the value of health. For her, wealth is about choice, the fluency of being yourself entirely and at will. The ability to adjust one's environment is an extension of wealth, to live how, where, and with whom we choose. She finds happiness when indulging her curiosity through finding joy in traveling, experiencing new things, and embracing change. She's not afraid of the novelty and willing to be physically and mentally uncomfortable to learn, balancing new experiences with the wisdom of retaining valuable aspects of the old. Let's welcome our next guest and her wealth of knowledge, Rivka.
Thank you. More about me. Well, I'm just someone who sort of is a lifelong learner. I came into the finance world because I knew I wanted to relieve pain, but I didn't have the stomach to be a doctor. And I figured this was a good way to help people feel better. And I've learned so much along the way. I've met some fantastic people. I live in the DC area. I'm a mother of 3 boys. We are all boy all the time. And I've been in practice. I've been a certified financial planner for over 15 years, and more recently a certified divorce financial analyst, and it's been incredible work.
So, Rivka, your health word is capacity. Tell us what this means to you.
To me, capacity means the ability to experience the world, whether it's physical or emotional or spiritual. It's about the ability to take in everything that's around you. And when physically we are drained or we're sick, it's incredibly hard to take in the world around us and all the good things and the not so good things that it has to offer. But just being able to experience, there's sort of like this wall between you and the rest of the world. And that also that could be coming from an emotional place or a spiritual place where you just feel disconnected. So to me, health, and when I talk to people about their health, especially as they age, they talk about the ability to engage. So for me, health is about the ability to engage in the world and with people sort of as our whole selves, or at least as much bring that day.
Have you had a time where you had a health issue, whether it was physical, emotional, where you had to go in and increase your capacity to get out and deal with your life and what was going on?
Definitely. There were moments where, well, there were like acute medical moments. So like I said, I had 3 kids and the third pregnancy went haywire and things got a little dicey. Things got a lot dicey. And in that moment, in those few days, I started to get a sense of what it really felt like to not be able to engage in the world around me. And that was a very grounding experience. And I'm very grateful that everything turned out just fine. On a more emotional and spiritual level, I've been in places, paths that I thought would take me to a good place that didn't take me to a good place, or I stayed in that place longer than I should have. And I got to a point where I was losing the will to keep moving forward. And those are the situations that take a long time to get into and a long time to get out of. But thankfully, I'm right now, actually, I'm digging myself out of a large one, but things are always better. It's sort of like, you're able to go outside and breathe fresh air, and I'm starting to do that again. So So yeah, I've experienced both acute and sort of the more extended experiences like that. And I have come to lean on my friends and the family you choose. And they have been invaluable in my ability to be healthy, just in a whole person.
It's funny, I was actually just about to ask you if you had that group of people that you could turn to, because sometimes when we're in those moments, we shut off, we shut down, and we don't even know where to begin as we're questioning ourselves as what's going on? Why am I feeling like this? What's happening in my world? And then it's like, who can I even turn to first to start my journey back out of just
Right.
being here?
Yeah. And who am I willing to trust with this image that I'm not sharing with everyone? Because we don't share our image. So, when you meet people and you say, "Oh, how are you doing?" and they really tell you. And then your response is, "Oh, I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting something real. I wasn't really being real." And then you get a true, genuine, whole response. We don't typically respond that way to people. And then you might have a few people in your inner circle that you are real with. I am so thankful and grateful to have people in that circle. And it started with one person, and then I started with two. And then I slowly pushed it out to include a few others. And I got to a point where when I was at a crossroads and I had to make a big decision in my life, and I counted the number of people who knew I was going to make this change, there were 8 people on my fingers. And I was just thinking, like, how did I get here? And it was that willingness to believe that people really do want to help you. They're not just saying it, and they want to be there for you, and to trust them. And that was a big hurdle for me, was learning how to trust more than just a tiny handful of people. And I have only benefited from it. And I learned that people are not expecting a perfect identity. They're not expecting a perfect picture. And they're okay with that because their picture isn't perfect either. And so sharing your mountain of imperfections with them actually draws you closer because they can relate to you better. So that's something that I learned, and I bring that now. I bring it to with my clients. I bring it, with my friends and with people I know in my community. If they ask me how I'm doing, I'm not going to give them the laundry list of things that annoyed me today, but I can be honest with something that I'm kind of struggling with, or, something that's been on my mind. And it actually sort of gives us contact points, which isn't a new lesson for me in my journey.
Yeah, it's so interesting because you mentioned it too, is like once you have that level of trust and honesty and you go, okay, I'm going to share this little bit with you, you find that they start to tell you stories. And it's this
Mhm.
new circle of trust that you've gained with them.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
amazing.
I'm going to throw this out there. It just popped into my mind. And it could be because my youngest is going into 6th grade and he's really into science. The strongest bonds between atoms are the ones where they give something to each other. And that's what bonds them, is that they give something and they get something. And so that just popped into my head for any science teachers out there.
I've got
But yeah, I
goosebumps.
think people are the same way. I think people are the same way.
Are there daily practices that you have taken away from your experiences of life, of making sure you have phone calls with people or walks and talks with people?
There are, I'm a planner by nature. I like to pretend that I can control the future by writing it down in a book, or on a computer. I have learned that not only is it acceptable, but it is productive to invest time and resources in processing my experience. And I have been in therapy the last couple of years, which has been invaluable. And now I take time out of my day to meet up with people, walk with them, exercise with them, get coffee with them, even if at first glance it doesn't look like very productive time, but it is. You're processing, you're digesting your week and these big ideas that are taking up your mind. And you need to break them down into usable pieces. And lots of times there's beautiful usable pieces in there, but not if you don't process it. So, so that's to me in my world, that means regular appointments. That means long-standing coffee dates with friends that it would take a train to reschedule these coffee dates with just, one or two, like the ones who keep you on the track. And when you're ready to go off the track, they reel you back in and you do it for them. Um, so investing that time, I had never been willing to invest time and resources before.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because there's the word capacity again. It's just here you were, and now it's like,
Yeah.
okay, it's expanding and expanding, and the capacity has just gotten so much bigger for you.
I feel like I've replanted myself in a bigger pot, and
I
it's
like
great.
that.
I have room.
That is a great analogy because now your leaves can just get bigger and bigger and your
More
roots.
roots, more leaves, bring it. I'll fill up this pot and I'll plant myself in another one, and that's okay.
That is- Your wealth word is choice. Tell us more about that.
Sure. In my experience, the people who feel the wealthiest are the ones who feel that they have control over their ability to keep themselves safe and comfortable. Those are the people who feel wealthy. There are a lot of people who have funds who don't feel wealthy. So that ability to choose, that agency, to me, is what wealth is all about. I have enough when I have the agency and the opportunity and the resources to make the choices that I want to make.
Mm. And when you're talking about wealth to your clients,
Hmm.
sure, there are so many levels that people come into of panic, excitement, comfort. How do you deal with all of those emotions when they come to you and working on what they're trying to choose for themselves?
I welcome them because they are the real drivers of my clients' financial decisions. I don't ask them to not be emotional about their money. Money is just a tool. So you need to really understand what the client wants and wealth and what wealth means to them. And usually it means the ability to choose how to spend their time. They just want the latitude and the flexibility. And what that means to me is the cash flow to be able to do that. And when they have to be told that they don't, even though they may have, lots of resources, but they don't have access to it, or they won't have access to it until after they want it. That's when they feel like their choice has been restricted and they don't feel wealthy. I'm constantly listening for emotions and choices, particularly choices that clients have made in the past. Everyone has their own financial signature. We give off kind of like an energy field. We give off a financial signature. There are the patterns in our lives that we choose, that we perpetuate. Maybe we were brought up in them and we continue them, or we chose them for ourselves and we hold on to them. But that creates, for any boating people out there, a wake. There's a trail behind you of financial choices. And I can pick up on those patterns and see how long they've lasted. I look for the longest standing patterns and try to get a sense of that person's sort of financial DNA. When something comes into their world, how do they deal with it? How do they approach it? And their emotions are a huge part of that. So you have to respect the beliefs and the values that a client brings to you. And, there are a lot of financial planning doesn't work for a lot of people because the practitioner just isn't accounting for those things. We're not just numbers on a page. And on it, for most people, even if they spend a lifetime saving money, the numbers on a page don't really mean anything to them. The question is, what is this money? What choices is this money going to make possible for you? And so that's how I describe saving to people as actually the choices you're creating for yourself in the future. So I focus on choice a lot, and the choices that will bring them peace. And that could be experiencing things, that could be being in a certain location. It could be the ability to pursue a hobby or something that just fills their cup. And we do that. And then we take an idea and put numbers to it and see how we're going to meet those numbers so that they can have that thing in their life.
So interesting. I mean, the way that you just broke it down, it's almost like another language that you're reading into and learning how to decipher and then communicate it back. Because I think there's so many people who are afraid to talk about it. I mean, it's not talked about out in public. It's always been something that's behind a closed door. We don't talk about money. We don't ask how much money somebody makes. We don't ask
Mhm.
those things of how much did that cost. We've been taught all these things. And then to like teach people how to do it appropriately, even for themselves, is a
Right.
whole nother level.
And kind of being honest about it, I'm a bit of a unicorn in the financial services world, just because I'm not trying to be intimidating and I'm not trying to make the client feel like they know less. I want them to make them feel like they know more. And when I work with a client, the first thing I want to do is build up their confidence by starting with something they did right and see how we can replicate that process in other areas. I did a seminar for the West Wing of the White House, which was really exciting. And in that seminar, I had a room full of people, and I just admitted flat out, investing isn't difficult. It's boring. So, and I got a good chuckle from the room, but that's the truth. I'm not looking to make this overly complicated. This is about getting it done. And my approach and my business model reflects that. So that it's really, there's a lot of opportunity for education and talking things out and figuring it out. And we do it together. And clients come away with an empowered feeling because they know exactly how this works. And, or at least enough that they're willing to learn. And they feel more confident that they can make smart, sustainable decisions. I think of It's funny, like I've been doing this for so long and I've been so interested in personal finance for so long. I forget that a lot of people don't want to do this. Like this is scary, and that people think about their money the way I think about my car. I have no idea how it works, but I really need it to work. So I try to keep that in mind and, go through the basics. This is the basic maintenance that you need to do. If a warning light comes on, bring it to me, take it in. Otherwise, here's really all you need to know day to day.
Do you have a client that you have seen like a really big change when they came in
Mhm.
that you could share with us? It was just like boom
Sure.
to boom.
So I've learned just through working with clients and um, talking with other practitioners in the space, that my approach is really embraced by people who are neurodivergent. And because I keep things very simple, streamlined, automated, I don't want you to spend a ton of time working on this. I just want to get it working like a well-oiled machine, which, believe it or not, you can do, so that you can focus on all the other areas of your life that bring you more joy. I have a client a longstanding client who's neurodiverse and just incredibly smart, driven, wants to improve things for themselves, um, just in with a clear vision that really inspires me. But they were missing information and they were overwhelmed by the volume of details. So we were able to, I remember I was expected to meet with them the first time for a couple of hours, and we ended up meeting for like 4.5 hours. And I kept asking, because I charge hourly. I'm like, are you sure you want to keep going? And they said that they did. And in that moment, we were able to accomplish a tremendous amount. And where they are now is light years ahead of where they were. And when you come to work with a neurodivergent community, you find that a lot. You'll hear nothing from them for 4 months. And then when they're focused on you, you can accomplish everything if you can just be standing in the right place at the right time to catch the ball. You can make tremendous progress, and then you won't hear from them again for another 4 months. And that's the kind of thing that drives a lot of practitioners crazy. But I understand, having worked in this community for a long time, that's just how it's going to go. And they are perfectly happy to work that way. They don't feel like I'm not serving them the way that they need just because there's long periods of time between working together. I have, clients who were able to take international trips for the first time that they really wanted to do and to do it without accruing any debt. Just really, and it might take a more flexible approach, but it's absolutely worth it. So yeah, I would say, the clients of mine who are neurodiverse have made tremendous progress because they're open to getting help and they recognize where their strengths are, and I'm willing to adapt to them. So we're able to build off the systems and the tools that already work for them.
It's amazing. As you talk with such passion of helping everybody. It's amazing. How did you get started in this? What was your driving force?
Well, I've always understood, even as a child, how important money was in life. And I knew that having your own money gave you your own choices, which is something every child wants. Every child wants more control over their lives. Um, and then when I was going through school, I actually had a media studies major and a business minor. But I really got into it when I was looking for a financial planner myself. And this was in the early 2000s. And I knew I needed to speak with someone who knew more than I did. And I wanted to learn. And I couldn't find anyone who was willing to teach me. And besides, I had to have $1 million to work with anybody. So I decided to pursue the education myself. And I enrolled in the College for Financial Planning. It's a distance learning course, supposed to take a couple years. And I figured I would earn back the tuition in cost savings with insurance and investments, and I would make it back. And so I completed the coursework, and I figured, let me sit for the exam. It's a $600 gamble, but let me see what happens because I really like this stuff. And I sat for the exam. It was a 2-day, 10-hour exam. I was 5 months pregnant at the time. And I passed. And I remember, and then at that point I thought, okay, I will go and I will interview with financial planning firms. I knew I wanted fee-only financial planning firms. I wasn't interested in selling products and earning commissions. I really wanted to provide advice. So I went, there's a sort of a financial district near where I live. And I went there and I started interviewing with people. And it became clear that my role in the company would be to but I really wouldn't be in a position to make decisions about them and what their paths would be. I would just bring them in and hand them off to somebody else. And I wasn't comfortable with that. So I was actually visiting someone at their office and I just said to one of their colleagues, oh, I just passed the CFP exam. And she looked at me and she said, that's great. Do you see clients? And I looked at her and I said, yes, I do. And that's how this got started. Thank you, Emily, for being my first client. I found it to be riveting. I loved working with people. I loved being able to navigate choppy waters with them. And that's sort of where I've always found myself, what I'm drawn to choppy waters. And so and to be able to help people navigate, rough seas, especially financial ones. So that's how it got started. And that's how I ended up sort of working with clients who don't have as many resources like service providers to work with. So I had my own practice, and then as my family grew, I needed my evenings and weekends back. But I wanted to do good work, which I knew meant working for the right people, especially with money. So I actually found a nonprofit that I was working for. They provided support to people with mental disabilities, and they provided a pooled special needs trust. And so I managed the special needs trust. And that is also where I learned more about just the neurodiverse community and what they needed. And I really enjoyed being this sort of central spoke or the financial wheel of a client. So between their family and their accountant and their lawyer and like all the people involved in helping, you know, grease the wheels of their life, that I really liked being a part of. So, and then other types of jobs took me in other areas, but I always came back to this. And my longest standing clients have been neurodiverse. It's just, if a client calls me and says everything's different now, I'm okay with that. That doesn't bother me. It might send another planner or an accountant, straight to the doctor, but that just doesn't bother me at all. It's like, okay, what's happening now? So I guess I anticipate that kind of change. And so people whose lives are changing, or there's sort of a higher level of buzz around them, that I fit.
And what advice would you have to someone who's in a place where they're just starting to make some choices about their lives and their wealth and their decisions and
Mhm.
don't even know where to start?
As a financial planner, I look at people's goals. And I would say, ask yourself, what is it that you really want? And a lot of people don't know. And that's okay if they don't know. There are things we can do to make sure that your financial life is humming along so that when you do know, you have the infrastructure and the right accounts in place to make that happen. But check in with yourself. And if you don't know what you want or what your highest priorities are, I say look behind you. Do a forensic look. Take the last 3 months of your statements. Where did your money go? Most of our money, I mean, we've got our bills, but our discretionary income usually gets spent when we're either bored or hungry. It's really not any more complicated than that. If you ask somebody what's important to you, you'll get a lot of answers. But when you actually look at what they've spent their money on, bored or hungry. So, okay, that's fine. That's human and that's normal. But now that we know that, we can ask ourselves a question. What do I want to spend my money on? Now that you have, education, you can make an educated choice. Okay, I'm informed. There's usually a moment, and I wait for this moment in every client interaction, where there's this moment where they just kind of think about it for a minute and they're kind of amazed. They learned something that they did not know about their life before. And in that moment, things are different. Their life is different now. Their understanding is different now. And then they might not know what to do with that information in that moment, and that's okay. But they have a tool that they didn't have before. And usually that tool ends up being like, wow, I had no idea I was spending that much money on that thing. And I don't want to spend that much money on that thing. And I want to spend it on that thing over there. So let's figure out, because at the end of the day, it all comes down to behaviors. Let's figure out how we're going to outsmart our bad habits and redirect that energy to something you actually do care about. And it's going to feel better when you spend money on it. It'll stay with you longer than just being bored or hungry.
I'm Sylvia. Look at this. Look. Look at these buttercups. Happiness on health, wealth, and happiness. I'm finding some happiness just playing in the ground, just like I'm a child all over again, laying in the grass and not worrying about grass stains or the bugs crawling over me or the worms that might come up because it just rained or the seeping wetness that's happening through my clothes. I'm just enjoying like I'm a child here in this grass and the dandelions and the other things, it's beautiful to have some happiness and some play. I highly advise it. And getting some sun in my face, oh, that feels fabulous. Oh, have some fun today and start rolling down that hill. Oh. So, Rivka, I am curious to know more about your happiness word of curiosity. How does indulging curiosity contribute to your happiness?
This is a me thing. I am always asking questions and I'm always curious about what I don't know. I'm the one who follows all those brown signs on the highway with some historical, in my area, every historical thing is a rusted out wagon wheel and half a brick wall. But I'll follow it anyway because I'm curious. And so the things that I have in my life, the plans that I'm making for myself, are all designed to help me be flexible in indulging my curiosity. So, me personally, I don't need a lot of things, but I need time and a very reliable vehicle and lots of gas money. That's what I need to be happy. And it's fine as long as I feel like I have the time and the energy and the resources to say, ooh, let's go see what that is. That makes me happy.
Yes, I am a kindred spirit when it comes to exploration and travel and just that the itch of a curiosity. Let's do the thing. Let's go now. And that's where the wealth goes.
Yeah. No, I hear it. And there are ways, to do it more sustainably or, based on financial situation is there's so many ways. And I'm so grateful to live in a time where there's so many ways to explore and see and try. It's like a treasure hunt where you're looking for wonder. You want to find something that's just going to make your eyes light up and your brain tingle and just be like, that is amazing.
So being a planner,
Mhm.
what is one unexpected time that you ended up taking a trip or traveling and you found something that is memorable?
Something that I did recently was I did indulge in a trip where I could have spent the time at home, like getting the house ready for when the kids were coming home. And instead I said, forget that. And I took a trip and it was really nice. And it was a few days, and it was a road trip. And I went to see some family and I went to just be in a place that brought me peace. And I didn't have any plans. I just went and the days filled up and I spent time with people I love. And I came back and I was replenished. And granted, that was a week ago and it feels like a month ago. But but I had moments where I could just be. And I don't have a lot of those right now. And I relish them. So I would say I took a moment where I could have been productive. And instead I explored. And that was good.
I love it. It almost comes back to your capacity word again. Finding those moments. You also mentioned you like the experience of being physically or mentally uncomfortable sometimes in those learning experiences. Is
Mhm.
there an experience that you would like to share with us?
I have experienced multiple natural disasters. I do not mess around with Mother Nature. Um, Deep, deep respect for Mother Nature. I had to get rescued by canoe when I was 5 from a flood in my house. So, like, utter respect for nature and its power. So, I would say there were times where I had to leave the security and the comfort I had known to move across the world to do something that I knew was right for me. And I had people waiting for me. There was a bit of a safety net in there. I wasn't just flying blind, but I had to literally just pack a bag and go. And that was hard. You look around and it's just you. So, whether you are trying to salvage the photographs that weren't destroyed in a flood because they were on the bottom shelf of the bookshelves, or you're sort of piecing your future back together. You thought it was going to be one thing and it turned out to be another. That moment of, it's okay, we're going to figure it out, and I have the resources that I need. Some people, some money, but it's going to be okay. And let's figure it out. And those are those moments where you're just like, okay, I'm going to start over again, and that's all right. I once described it to someone as like molting. Like you're limited, and then you go through this process where you shuck this old circumstance or old approach, and you get to grow bigger.
Yeah, I can actually feel the skin coming off like a skin, and you're like, oh, what is going on? What is happening?
Right. And it doesn't feel good. You have to fight your way out. You have to fight your way out of yourself. But when you do, you can like breathe a full breath and there's space to grow. And I think a lot of us aren't taught that that's actually a normal part of life. So I'm learning it now.
Certain circumstances, whatever they are, bring about that new awakening and that curiosity because you
Mhm.
weren't thinking about those things before. And suddenly it's like, oh, I turned right when I thought I was going left, but this is a whole new path.
Right. And you're growing in a direction that you weren't growing before, which could be a little scary, but it's happening already. Like at least in my life, I don't I can control whether or not I want to recognize it and respect it and foster it. But I can't control when my mind decides that it wants something it didn't want before. Not every, from a science standpoint, not every mutation is viable. So you might come up with an idea and follow that idea and realize that's not really going a direction that you overall want to go in. It turned out to be more of a curiosity than a drive. But some of them, you follow them or they gain strength quickly because they're tapped into something real. And that can be really scary when you know that there's a growing part of yourself that wants to do something very different.
What advice do you have to give to your sons as they are going through their teenage years and on into adulthood?
Be nice to your mother. While this is more of a new approach for me, this isn't quite the persona my kids grew up with. It's be genuine, whatever your choices are, whatever, because, he's at a stage in life, post high school where he's making a lot of big decisions for himself and he's making them on his own. Just follow a genuine path. It really matters. And if you don't know what you really want, that's okay. Go figure it out. But do what your core needs because that need only gets stronger over time. You can ignore it for only so long to make other people happy or whatever. But that voice, that drive doesn't go away. So respect it because that's actually who you are and listen and make what you will of it. But just be honest. Honesty in financial planning is the most important aspect. If you make plans based on what you want to see on paper, but isn't really you, it's not going to work. Be honest and be kind.
Rivka, if you could give the gift of health, wealth, or happiness, which one would you give and why?
Sure. I would give health. So you have that foundation, to be able to explore the other areas. And I'm not saying that someone who isn't healthy can't also be happy and have capacity for other things, but it drains them on a fundamental level. And they still find ways to enjoy themselves, hopefully, but if you ask them, they'd want their health back before other things. So I would say health and that capacity to take in the world and be present wholly in the world.
We have a question from our previous guest.
If you had it all, what would be the one thing that you would do to leave with us to make this world a better world?
I would leave instructions on how to replicate what I did. My approach, just me personally, is of sustainable growth, but that takes time and it takes vision and it takes patience. And so the people who would be successful in replicating it would also have those qualities. And I do think that those qualities are helpful to the human race. So that's what I would do is I would leave behind instructions that speak to and are successful by people who have those constructive qualities.
Rivka, I am thrilled to have you as a guest today. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your warmth, your stories. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. This was a joy.
And I hope we'll get to see you again on one of our future panels.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you.